What was the threat?
The threat was he was still struggling with the officer. The officer was in the act. It's a fluent act of the officer getting him out of the vehicle and onto the ground so they can get him in handcuffs. At no point did Mr. Dominguez give the officer any indicia of compliance. He ignored every single comment, every single command by the officer. The officer had absolutely every right to order him out of the car and for him to be out of the car.
When you say non-compliant, ignored every command, isn't that looking at the facts in the light most favorable to your client? I mean, we've all watched the video, and it struck me that while nobody in this video is behaving entirely sensibly, in the light most favorable to the driver, it appears that he was trying to comply with giving them identification.
I have to go home. I have to get changed. I have a shift that starts at 8 o'clock.
Well, that's going to take you longer if you keep the attitude.
Well, I don't have an attitude. Do you want to tell me what you need?
Yeah, I need your license, registration, proof of insurance.
He was trying to comply with ratcheting things down. Why should we look at it in the light most favorable to your client in terms of whether he was complying or not complying? Why shouldn't we just look at the video and look at it in the light most favorable to the driver?
The Supreme Court requires us to look at, the court to look at the facts, the admitted facts from a reasonable officer's perspective.
Right, but that's not the same as in the light most favorable to your client.
Your Honor, we have, at the point that he is ordered out, he orders Mr. Dominguez out of the vehicle 7 times, and on the 7th time in the warning, get out or I'm going to rip you out of the car.
Isn't he also standing in front of the door, not allowing the driver to get out of the car while he's ordering him out of the car?
Go ahead and step out of the car.
You don't have a right to open.
Go ahead and step out of the car.
This is private property.
Go ahead and step out.
Do not touch me.
Get out of the car.
Do not touch me.
Judge Desai, I believe that it is I think is a red herring for the point of the use of force. There was no force used. He's ordering him out of the car. Plaintiff is leaning back, much like you or I might do if we drop our cell phone in our car. But what is he leaning back for? Is he leaning back from a reasonable officer's perspective to gain access to something? To gain a weapon? And then when he reaches suddenly back, is the officer not reasonable in perceiving that to be an imminent threat? And that's the point that force is used, regardless of whether he could get out of the car or not. At that point, Mr. Dominguez was a passive resistor until the point that he chose to make that sudden, unexpected reach, which was different from every other fidget or looking for papers. The tensions had risen at that point, and he unexpectedly reached into the dark interior compartment of that car.
Oh, it wasn't all that dark because the other officer was the other side shining his flashlight in that direction.
There's no evidence, Judge Clifton, that Officer Kohler saw anything that the flashlight was shined upon. And even if it did.
I'm not saying what he saw. I'm saying it wasn't all that dark. You're trying to emphasize it's dark, and I'm saying, gee, a flashlight is going through with the officer on the other side. So, again, it seems to me that your argument depends on a certain characterization of the facts, and that's not what we're supposed to be doing here. If the facts are disputed, if there's a genuine issue of material fact, which there appears to be, then summary judgment doesn't appear appropriate. Now, if you want to settle on the uncontested facts, that's fine, but you're not doing that. You're insisting, for example, sudden reach into a dark part of the car, and that is not uncontested. So tell me, based on uncontested facts, I accept the law that says we look from the perspective of the officer, but I also accept the law that says contested facts, we look from the non-movement's perspective. In this case, that's the plaintiff. So you've got to get us to facts that are not contested, that establish the basis for qualified immunity. And all of your arguments so far seem to me to wander into the territory that requires us to accept facts that are not uncontested.
Mr. Dominguez reached into the car. We do not know from the officer's perspective, where was he reaching? Was he reaching under the seat, between the seats? If it was daylight, I mean, it makes it worse that it was dark and that the flashlight might intermittently be showing things. But the court has clearly recognized that weapons can be hidden anywhere, and this car was clearly cluttered. In addition, we have admitted facts. We have the reach. We have the active resistance that Matos defines, the clutching of the wheel, the bracing inside the car, and you see the ignored commands on the video. You see the continued resistance as he gets out of the car. And I will respectfully disagree with the district court that the video doesn't contradict Mr. Dominguez's story. It clearly does. And I'll refer the court to Officer McKelly's on-body camera video.
We've all watched the video. Mm-hmm. You can take that as a given. I got to say, the impression I came out of it, and we haven't conversed among ourselves, but the impression I came out didn't really corroborate the officer's description. And so a jury looking at that might reach the same kind of conclusion I reached, which is, the officer was the one that was instigating this problem. He didn't really seem threatened.
The officer did not ask Mr. Dominguez to reach. The officer reacted to the reach. The officer asked for his license and registration. He was expressing his suspicion with the story that's being given by Mr. Dominguez. And I think when you look at the moment of the reach, it is whether an objective officer would have reacted to that reach. Would an officer sit back and wait? Mullinex versus Luna tells them that he doesn't have to do that.
So, counsel, what the district court found at ER 16 is a reasonable jury could conclude that when taking the totality of the circumstances into account, Kohler unnecessarily created his own sense of urgency, and the potential threat of a weapon without more did not create an immediate danger that justified the use of substantial force.